So this video is going to be a little bit longer because I'm basically going to show everything from my patching and sanding progress to what the end results look like and even B's reaction to seeing the end results. So make sure you stay till the end to see his reaction. I'm sure most of you have figured out by now that we've officially moved into our new home. We spent the better half of the last of February getting everything packed up at our rental house and moved over to our new home. But our official move-in date for our new home wasn't until the very end of February. So needless to say, I'm a little bit behind on showing the update videos and the progress that we've made in getting it ready to move in. But the last couple of weeks ended up being a lot busier than I expected, with so many more trips back and forth between our rental and our new home with all of our belongings, and then even just getting the rental home ready to move out of, cleaned, and ready for our landlady to inspect. But we did it. We're officially moved out of the rental. We're moved into our own home, and we are loving the more rural set life. We can actually wake up to hear the birds chirping every morning. They're not drowned out by the sound of ambulances and fire trucks and car horns and buses. And it's been great. We can just walk out onto our deck in the morning with a cup of coffee, enjoy the fresh air. And little B has been absolutely loving the sunshine, getting outside, looking out all of the windows. So it's been a very positive experience for us so far. Now, while I didn't exactly get as much work done as I was hoping to before we moved in, just because once I started working on everything, I started to realize that things needed a little bit more TLC than originally expected. So the cleaning itself definitely took us a few days, but even just the priming to cover up that, what I've been told, terracotta orange, that took a few days as well. And then having to wait between coats before priming again, or the multiple layers of paint that it took on the ceiling just to cover up the yellow and all of the gunk that had settled on the ceiling over the years. So there were definitely a few experiences where I was really trying not to feel discouraged because I just wanted to get to the fun part. I wanted to start putting color on the walls. I wanted it to start feeling like our home rather than just a project. But I promise you that the end results were so worth the time and effort that it took to get there. And it was definitely one of those projects that as you started it, you were always finding something else that needed to be done. So for example, the ceiling, I knew that I wanted the ceiling painted eventually, but I ended up deciding to do that while we were doing everything else because I wanted to paint the ceiling before I painted the walls. And then once I started painting the ceiling, I realized that it was going to need more work than I originally thought because I couldn't scrape off all of the gunk that was on the ceiling. It took 3 coats just to get it covered and looking fresh and even. And honestly, if it hadn't been for my girlfriends helping me out as much as they did, it probably would have taken me 6 months to make the progress that we did. But even just slapping that fresh coat of white paint on the ceilings brightened the rooms up so much. And I honestly didn't even realize how yellow the ceilings actually were until I got that white coat of paint up there. But it was 100% worth the extra time and effort that it took to get it done. And needless to say, my neck and back were definitely feeling it for a few days after this. But I was always finding little projects to do along the way. For example, the windows are definitely going to need to be upgraded in the next year or two. So I decided to go around and just do some resealing to them just to help make sure that we're keeping that moisture and draft out of the house. So that definitely took a little bit of time away from being able to complete the painting. But overall, it was a quick and easy fix, and it'll probably add some extra life to our windows before we have to replace them. And as I mentioned in previous videos, I'm by no means an expert. So there were definitely a few speed bumps that we hit along the way that made the whole experience a little more entertaining.
Yeah, I primed it with the coats first. What the heck happened there? Oh my gosh. Hopefully you have more rollers.
But moments like this make the experience memorable, and I had fun, and at the end of the day, we still got the job done.
I got a fancy ergonomic paint panel now. It moves with you from a natural flow.
I may have gotten a bit more paint on the floor than I originally expected, and I did my best to cover the floor up to try to minimize our cleanup work, but obviously things happen. So there was a lot more time spent on cleaning up the oopsies off the floor than I had originally anticipated. And of course, there's still all the little projects I want to do. I have some work that I want to do on the master bathroom. And honestly, we're probably just going to completely regut the lower second bathroom that we have. But all of that will just be stuff that comes with time, and we'll work away at it as we go. And of course, I'm seeing spots now on the ceiling that probably could have used a touch up, or little spots that didn't even get touched at all. But I have so much paint left over from all of this, and all those touch-ups will just come with time as well. So for now, we at least have the majority of it done. The house looks fresh and clean, and it was done just in time for us to move in at the end of the month. And I will admit, I definitely pushed myself hard with this project. And having just had a baby, not even 4 or 5 weeks before, I was really giving it my all. I'm just very blessed that I have a supportive partner who was willing to stay home with little B all of those days that I needed the time to come out to the house and work on everything. I have had a couple comments asking, why wasn't he helping you? He should have been out there with you. And honestly, stuff like this is more my thing than his. So he was more than happy and willing to stay home with little B and make sure that he was taken care of while I came out to the house and got everything worked on and made it into a home that was ready for us to move into. And honestly, I loved that I got to surprise him with it, because when we first looked at the house, he was obviously a little bit intimidated by the amount of work that needed to be done. So having it completely changed by the time we moved in and showing him the end result definitely relieved a lot of his stressors about moving into a house that needed so much work. And once we finally got to start throwing the color up, I was so excited. I am absolutely in love with the shade of green that I ended up going with. Choosing paint colors can be so hard because you know that it's going to look so much different on your wall than it does on a swatch or a sample. So I spent hours going through TikTok and YouTube and looking at videos of the end result of people's rooms using the colors that I was interested in. I ended up settling for October Mist by Benjamin Moore, and I am so happy with this color. It's such a gorgeous shade of green. It still reflects all the light, so it brightens all of the rooms up so much. And having this as an accent color just really balances out the tones that we already have going on in our home. Now, I was keeping this as much of a surprise from B as I could. However, I did let him know that I was going to be painting some of the walls green. So you can imagine how that went over when he's not really able to visualize things. So trying to explain that it's green, but not like lime green or neon green, but a nice green. He had all kinds of ideas running through his head on what it was going to look like. So he wasn't really sure if he should be excited or nervous. But once I saw the color on the wall myself, I assured him that he was going to love it. Maybe not as much as I loved it, but he was definitely going to love the end results, especially considering where we came from with the terracotta orange. It was 100 times better. So once I actually got to start working on the color side of painting, everything went a lot smoother. It was so much fun and made all the stressing and anxiety that I'd had while we were priming and doing the ceiling all worth it. But as we were getting closer to our move-in date, I was running out of time, and I only had a couple of days from when I first started putting the color on the walls to when we were going to be moving all of our stuff in. Now, we weren't going to be moving in right away. However, we wanted to get everything out of the rental so that I could get that cleaned up before we left a few days later. But I was starting to feel the pressure and the crunch was on. I ended up coming out to the house by myself one day and spent a solid 10 hours nonstop. I stopped for maybe 5 minutes for water over the course of that time, just going hard trying to get all of the painting done. So with having the October Mist on a couple of walls just as accent colors, our primary wall color was this gorgeous off-white that I also got from Benjamin Moore that's called Steam. And that kind of hit a couple snags as well because it went on so light, it took me at least 2 and a bit coats to get everything properly covered, even with the primer. And because I was out there by myself, it was a very, very, very long, tiring day. Also, please excuse my attire. That is not my midsection showing. That is the band of my maternity pants. Unfortunately, with those, shirts tend to ride up, and you don't really feel that they've ridden up. So that is not me flashing you. That is just my tan maternity band. Thankfully, in the course of that 10-hour day, I was able to get all of the color on the walls first and second coat, but the real challenge came with the vaulted ceilings in our entryway because the walls and ceiling itself were so high up, there really wasn't a way to reach it without getting an incredibly tall ladder. Unfortunately, because I was so burnt out by the time I got to this stage, I did forget to set up my camera and record. However, probably for the better because it was not a pretty experience. It was very time-consuming, clunky, and a little bit sketchy a few times there. But at least I was able to get all of the terracotta covered. I got the first coat of paint on. I do have some work on the trim left to do in the corners. But even just getting all of this primer covered up with that gorgeous steam color really started to bring the entire house together. And as exhausted and tired as I was by the end of this day, it was so worth it to see the end result and just know that B was going to get to see this when he walked in a couple of days, not the bright orange walls that he had last seen. So stay tuned to see his reaction next.
Wow, you did a really great job there.
Ooh, looks like an answer.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I like that pantry quite a bit.
It is so nice.
Wow.
You did that first.
Nice hangout area. Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice deck.
Pretty good, really good. Yeah, like full wraparound deck.
Yeah, that thing's still leaking. Fine.
He hasn't even walked into your bedroom yet, by the way.
Yeah.
No. Went up here and then straight outside.
See the screen still?
Oh, barely.
Yeah. Have you looked at the bedroom yet?
No. Wow. That's so much better. Great job, babe.
Hey,
Looks really good.
looks like you actually want to live in here now.
Yeah, it definitely brightens it up.
That's a big tub.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And then you rip this thing up to it. Yeah. Put something in there.
That's nice. That's a lot of bathroom storage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah, great.
It's a lot of actual like storage here too.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. All right.
And even without seeing the extent of the filth and dirt that we had to clean through to get to this point, I think it's pretty easy to see just how much of a transformation it's already made just in the paint alone. And while I still have lots of little projects to keep me busy over the next few months, I am so happy that this is the home that we got to move into, and this is the home that we get to start our next adventure in.